What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. We are flying solo as of the moment. Haven't heard from the guys yet. They may be in here momentarily, but if not, we're ready to roll and talk some Green Bay Packers. Had a lot of news drop today. Obviously, we had the Jaire Alexander situation come to an end, I guess you could say. We got a little bit of Elgton Jenkins news. We got a bunch of great questions in the Patreon group, which we're going to hit on, talking a little bit specifically about the coverage unit, the cornerback room as it sits right now. We're getting a mixed bag of, like looking at the chat here pre-show, seems like there's more people upset than not. But if you go to Twitter and the Twitter poll, it's large majority agree with the Packers in this situation. It looks like actually last time I checked here, let me double check. Yeah, 95% of the votes here on YouTube are saying they agree with the Packers move as well. So let's just dive right into it as we get ready to Chris says Tim don't want anything to do with this episode. LOL. Tim, actually, we were chatting earlier today. Tim understands. Tim gets it. We all knew this was a possibility. I want to say this. This isn't a victory lap by no stretch. But I'm damn proud of how we covered this whole situation. We kind of read through the BS and caught on to a couple of good sources. And even though some of the Packer fan base was upset that these rumors were swirling about Jaire, we stuck to the people that had inside sources, which I'm just going to say it. Rob Demovsky caught a lot of hell over this story. He was the first one to talk about it. And they haven't came out and said it, but since I'm a fan and I'm not in the media, I can say it. I believe his source the whole time was Jaire Alexander, me personally, or at least his agent. So when fans came at Rob saying he's trying to run him out of town, it sounds like Jaire's camp was the one feeding him that information. Rob didn't say that. Reading the tea leaves, reading between the lines, that's who the inside source was there. So as a fan base, we need to slow our roll a little bit. We need to slow our roll and stop going after people who are reporting on the team. And I've been guilty of it too, because sometimes it does feel like people are trying to drum up drama, but in all honesty, they're doing their job. And all I know is everybody who was calling out Rob, I don't see them apologizing to him today. So it is what it is, right? But with that being said, let's just dive into the information. All right. And again, Tim understands, Chris. Tim understands the whole situation. And that's what I was getting to. We covered this the whole way, and we told you when there was an update, we take a step back. I don't know. Maybe he is staying. Oh, LaFleur made a comment. That kind of felt like that's a positive, right? But at the end of the day, Brian Gutekunst gets final say, and this was a Goody move. Goody said it early on. If he's not going to be on the team, we want to make sure we get something for him. He didn't get nothing for him, but that comment is what people truly should have keyed in on, myself included, was him coming out in the public and saying that. And I want to give a shout out to Jason Wilde, because Jason Wilde said it from the beginning. He said, I've covered the team since 1996, and I have never heard a GM come out and make that kind of statement about a player. Basically saying, yeah, we need to get something for him because we've made an investment in him. And that should have been the tipping point of what Rob was saying, of like, hey, their plans are to move on. And you guys remember, Rob said 99.5% that Jaire will not be back. And then when it looked like it got back to Jaire potentially coming back to Green Bay, boy, oh boy, did everybody give him hell over that 99%. Well, he was right. So, it is what it is, right? Greg says, who in here was mad? Go up and look at the comments, bud. To me, it looked like there was several people in here that were making comments like they were ticked off about it. But, yeah, again, it shouldn't catch anybody off guard. It shouldn't. However, I remember J. Cole asked this earlier today as well. I think it might have been the Patreon group. I can't remember where it was. He says we couldn't move on sooner. There was no benefit to moving on sooner, Jay. And the reason being is if you cut loose of him sooner, then you lose out on the possibility of a team not getting a draft pick they want and saying, dang, we need corner now. And they have to go out and trade for a corner, right? And Jaire would have, his value would have been elevated, right? There was absolutely no negative to keeping him this long. Matter of fact, like Brian Balaga and I think it was Hauser said, you could have ran this up to week 1 before the money was guaranteed, right? And then you could just kind of let him sit in the background like, hey, we still got him. So if anything, I kind of wish they would have held on to him until at least the start of training camp, in case, God forbid, something happens in minicamp and a player goes down with an injury for another team, and now all of a sudden there's an extra added market for Jair Alexander. So that's kind of how I see that. So, yeah. Now debates, lots of people from Whoville commenting earlier. Wasn't that funny, Bates? You caught that too, didn't you? Like, I was looking up going, I've never seen these people before. And I shouldn't say this, but it looked like a couple burner accounts, did it not, Bates? And it reminded me of someone who used to be in here on a consistent basis. So anyway, Coach Lynn said we did Ja solid by releasing him now. I agree and I somewhat disagree, Coach. If you really wanted to do him a favor, you would have released him going into free agency, right? That way he would have been able to maximize his effort in trying to land with the team. But I also understand what you're saying there too, because if you hold him until training camp, then obviously that's really putting his back against the wall a little bit. So it's kind of a happy medium, I guess you could say. And again, they were looking to get something. Now, here's the other thing. They wanted him back. The Packers wanted him back for the right price, for what they considered the right price. Whether we agree with it or not, the Packers put a number on it and said, hey, look, we need to get this contract down to this point because he's missed so much time. And, kind of is what it is. So, yeah, but I can understand where you come from there, Coach, for sure. All right, let's get into it. So what I'm going to do here, guys, you know, Sports Talk has been all over this all day long. I'm going to try to give you a little bit different angle. I'm going to walk you through the entire process from today. We'll talk about salary cap ramifications. We'll talk about, on the next segment here in a second, we're going to talk about what the cornerback room looks like now. And someone had asked in the Patreon group about, coverage grades, things like that. We'll also talk about how effective or ineffective the Packers secondary was last year without Jair Alexander, which I think you guys will be surprised on that as well. So anyway, here's how everything unfolded today. Ian Rappaport put the tweet out earlier today, about 9 hours ago. The Packers are releasing star cornerback Jair Alexander today, sources say. Then Spot Track jumped right on it and said, the Packers are releasing cornerback Jair Alexander, who had 2 years, $37 million remaining on his contract. The 28-year-old earned over $72 million in 7 seasons with Green Bay, leaving behind dead cap hits of $7.5 million in 2025 and $9.5 million in 2026. So it sounds like they chose to approach it from that direction where you're absorbing less of a cap hit this year. And that does kind of make you scratch your head a little bit, but at the same time, it doesn't matter whether, if you don't use that cap space this year, it rolls into next year. Okay. And I want to say this, Chris N asked a great question in our Patreon group asking about the salary cap situation for next year. He seemed to think, hey, are we kind of up against the gun next year in terms of the salary cap? And he said, Clayton, the Packers are up against a cap already for next season, right? Do you think Goot just wants to roll a majority of the $45 million into next year? As it sits right now, and I think the rollover cap is factored in real time. I could be wrong, but it's showing next year on Spot Track that we have $29 million in cap space next year. So as the roster sits right now, I would imagine that's factored in with the rollover cap. You're sitting at roughly $29 million right now. So yeah, you're not going to go out and spend that $45 million this year. And here's the other thing: who are you going to go get? Who do you want? And I've heard some people say Trey Hendrickson. Listen, if we weren't going to re-sign, if we weren't going to bring Jair Alexander back on the deal we already agreed to, with him 28 years old with injury problems, you think we're going to bring in a 30-plus-year-old, right? Edge defender. Now, yes, he was the sack king last year. Absolutely. But my thing is, it's not about what we want. It's where's the precedent at? When was the last time Goody paid $30 to $40 million for a free agent? Never happened. Or trading for a player and then bringing them in, and then you tack on the 30-year-old effect, and then on top of that, Trey Hendrickson wants a new deal. That's the whole reason he's holding out in Cincinnati, right? Or not holding out, but I guess he's technically holding out. So, are you going to give him an extension? If not, then he probably won't even agree to that trade, right? So it's kind of like the problem that we ran into here with Jair. Is the main thing was they could not work out a deal, and we'll get to that here in a second. Like other teams couldn't even come to an agreement with Jair, it sounds like, because that was a big factor there. It wasn't just so much about draft compensation. It was about, well, if he's not going to play in Green Bay at that number, he's not going to play there at that number. So if he's not going to get a deal that's worth it for him, then he'd rather just be released and he can pick where he goes, which I can understand that. So again, there's the salary cap ramifications. Now here we go. Cap space this year after the Jair cut, the Packers have the fourth most amount of cap space at $45 million in cap space. Now, I've heard a lot of sports talk today. I think they were talking about Wilde and Tausch earlier today. And in no way is this meant to be disrespectful towards anybody's opinion that may have spoken on it today, but it turned into you can't say you're all in if you got that much cap space sitting in this year. Well, when you go into next year, obviously, if that is factoring in the rollover cap for next year, you've got other contracts that are kind of coming due next year, right? And what I mean by coming due, like there's the cap hit's going to go up next year. So this isn't so much about, hey, let's go out and spend $45 million this year. It's probably somewhere in between. If there was a player you could sign, and again, we mentioned Trey Hendrickson, but guys, I could be wrong, but I don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. Like I don't see the precedent. I personally would not do it. If I was the general manager and you say, Clayton, you can go trade a second-round pick, and that seems to be what Cincinnati's wanting for Trey Hendrickson. You can give up a second-round pick for a 30-year-old edge defender that you're going to have to give a 3 to 5 year contract for. That's going to be arguably the highest paid, at least top 3, maybe top 5 edge defenders in the league. You're setting yourself up to have a ton of dead cap at the end because he's liable to hit that wall. There's no way I would do that. Me personally, I just wouldn't. And again, you got to run everything through the filter of what did the team look like last year? Why did we lose to the Philadelphia Eagles? That's what it always comes back to, is like when you lost those tough games, and we're going to get into a conversation about that here in a minute as well. When you lost those tough games last year, you went 1-5 in your division. What caused you to go 1-5, right, in those games? We already talked about it. Spoiler alert, it's because we kept turning the damn ball over. So why are we turning the ball over? Typically, it's either because the quarterback's making bad decisions or he's being pressured into throwing picks. I think both were a little true. So you go to the fast forward to the Philly game. Why did you lose? You lost because your offensive line completely crumbled against the best defensive line and arguably the best defensive line in football. That's what happened. So who gives a rat's ass about going and getting another edge defender when you finished second in the league in run defense and you finished 8th in EPA per pass? So your defense is in a good spot right now, right? So what did you need to shore up? You need to shore up your offensive line. That's what you need to do. Now, Jordan Morgan being healthy, if he's healthy this year, that's going to help. And Goody covered the bases by going to get Aaron Banks. Whether you think Aaron Banks is a good signing or not, I mean, only time will tell. Goody thought, this dude is at the upper echelon of the offensive line in the league. We need to go get this guy. So, I don't know. When you look at the decisions that Goody made, it lines up with everything that I believe around the team. And what I mean by that is last year people were saying cornerback's one of, if not the most important positions on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm going, I don't even have it listed as tier 2. You guys understand that, right? Like tier 1, defensive tackle and edge defender. Tier 2, mock linebacker and post safety. And both of those are interchangeable now. The mock can play will, the will can play mock. The post, the free safety can play post. The strong safety can play post. It's very, very interchangeable. But the point is, you want to build out the center of that defense, guys. I don't even have cornerback listed as a tier 2 position. And it seems to line up with how Goody feels about roster building as well, whether it's right or not. When you look at everything across the league, like look at what Fangio and the Philadelphia Eagles did last year with their DB room. They didn't go out and pay a bunch of money for DBs. They had 2 rookies in the lineup. You know what I'm saying? So they didn't prioritize it from a sense of that needs to be our largest cap hit, And again, I always run it through the filter of you want to know what's most important to these GMs. Where are they spending the majority of their money at? Their money and draft capital comes into play as well, but mostly money, in my opinion. So, all right, moving along here. Jordan Schultz put this out. Now, this is just a little behind the scenes look at kind of how everything unfolded. He sent this to me in a DM about midday, and I tweeted it out immediately. Sources: the Packers and the Bills held trade talks this offseason centered around cornerback Jaire Alexander, but talks ultimately fell through and Buffalo moved on. It's unclear if the Bills will revisit things now that Alexander's been released, especially since they spent a first-round pick on Maxwell Hairston, but they were a team that had shown real interest. So I think that ship is already sailed, unless, of course, Jaire's market is completely in the tank and you can get him for $3 to $5 million. I could see Buffalo going, heck, let's just go ahead and shore that all the way up, right? Let's go ahead and shore it. So just wanted to mention, though, that Jordan Schultz did report that the Bills were one of the teams that was interested. Now, why didn't they trade for him then? Didn't have nothing to do with draft capital. I guarantee you it was, if Jaire's not willing to work that deal, we're not going to pay him $17 million this year. That's crazy. Essentially, the way the deal was going to work, guys, is if he made the roster, right, and he got hurt and went on IR, he's getting the full $17 million. That's how that was designed. And that's why the Packers were looking to restructure that to where they could protect themselves. And I want to say this. If we were to look at this from a different angle, I kind of feel like, and I'm just simply speculating as a stupid fan, it kind of felt like as soon as the season was over and Jaire made those comments in the locker room to the local media that I'm not talking to anybody, I'm not going to be here next year anyway, I ain't got nothing nice to say, I ain't got nothing good to say. It kind of feels like the exit interview was Goody going, hey, man, if you're going to be back, we got to do something about this contract because you have cost us a lot of money sitting on the bench. And I wonder and kind of feel like there were times that they thought he could go, he could play. Matt LaFleur got frustrated as hell last year, the year before as well. I wonder if they felt like the team doctors felt like he can go and Jaire was pulling back a little bit. Now, that's speculation, but I don't know, man. As everything was unfolding today, I kept finding myself kind of coming back to that. Like, I wonder if there's a little bit of that going on, that they felt like, okay, if we make it more incentive laced in terms of the contract, where he has to have a certain amount of snaps. He has to have a certain amount of games he's playing in. And he's not just going to go out there and, okay, well, I'm hurt or I'm getting paid anyway type thing. I wonder if a little bit of that came into play. And here's the other thing I want to roll out, or I don't want to roll out as well. If Jaire goes and hits the market and nobody has any offer for him, I don't think there's like a 0% chance of him returning. I think it's very, very, very low. But what if he goes and hits the market and the other teams say, they offer him half of what let's say that the Packers were going to say, we'll guarantee $8 million of it. And then you can make the full 17 if you play it every game. Let's just use that as just an example. And then he hits the open market and the market's just $4 million. He may come back to the Packers and go, hey, that deal's still on the table. And why would the Packers not offer that deal? Right. Again, I think it's highly unlikely that happens, but that's another angle too. If we can all be mature and not hold a grudge against each other, how this whole thing unfolded, because it kind of felt like Jaire was calling their bluff, like, hey, I'm going to make them cut me. I'm showing up to minicamp, and that's why he was cut today. You guys remember us talking about that? We nailed that. Absolutely crushed that. That, I don't know if hypothesis is the right word. Prediction, I guess you could say, is like him saying he was going into minicamp. There were people on Twitter running victory laps. Like, he's coming back. We told you. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. Let's chill out a minute, because that now forces the Packers' hand. So I don't know, man. We'll see exactly how the rest of that unfolds. Moving along here, though. Potential landing spots for Jaire. Right now, they're saying the Philadelphia Eagles, Los Angeles Rams, Minnesota Vikings, Baltimore Ravens, Carolina Panthers, Las Vegas Raiders. Now, notice Buffalo Bills are not on that list because they spent a first-round pick on Maxwell Hairston. That's probably going to deter them a little bit. However, if they could get him for pennies on the dollar, they'd probably want to add Jaire as well, But Philadelphia Eagles make all the sense in the world to me right here. Carolina, obviously, we know the coin toss situation. It could be one of those things where he obviously would want to go back home. I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. But we'll kind of see where he ends up landing. If he lands in Minnesota, I've seen people go, "Oh, you better not go to the North." I could care less, guys. You guys know how I feel about this. You either got a good team or you don't. If you don't think you got a good team, you got bigger problems than worrying about if a guy who couldn't stay on the field healthy is going to come in and beat you. He could sign with the Vikings and dominate. He could go out there and shut down our number one receiver, whoever that may be. And that's not the end of the world. I don't worry about that stuff, man. He's going to land somewhere. And if he wants to try to prove it, and Minnesota probably the good spot to go, right? If he does, then let's go out there and kick his ass. That's the way I feel about it. I don't understand the whole he better not land in Minnesota. I don't think coaches operate like that either. I don't think Jeff Hafley and Matt LaFleur and his whole coaching staff sit back and go, I hope he don't sign with Minnesota. They're probably competitive as anybody and saying, I hope he does sign with Minnesota. Let's go out there and cook him. I don't know. That's just kind of how I look about that. But anyway, hey, fam, I see you changed up there a little bit, right? Zach Tom will not be re-signed by 2/15/26. Imagine that. Before free agency, right? You lost that energy, bub. You lost that energy real quick. So, of course, they might let him test the market. But he's going to end up being a Packer. There's no doubt in my mind there. If you truly don't think so, then let's get that dozen of donuts on the line there. All right. So here was the press release from Goody. All right. So Brian Gutekunst issued the following statement, quote, in his 7 seasons with the Packers, Jaire established himself as one of the premier players in the NFL at one of the game's most challenging positions. His contributions to our organization were felt on the field, in the locker room, and in our community, and he will be missed. We appreciate all he gave, and we wish him all the best moving forward. So classy, obviously a very, very classy statement there by Goody. And that does kind of feel like they're moving on. There's probably very, very, very little chance that he would go test the market and Packers actually gave him the best deal. If I had to guess, maybe the deal they offered him was an extreme pay cut, something like, $4 or $5 million, something like that. Maybe what the fair market value, is. So AFAM says we need to pick a date. AFAM, it's real simple, Bo. We were very clear on these stipulations. We said Zach Tom will re-sign with the Green Bay Packers. You said Zach Tom will not re-sign with the Green Bay Packers. Now you're saying there has to be a date that it's done by in order for it to be. No, get out of here with that crap. All right. He says per AFAM's legal team. Gotta love this dude. I try to hate AFAM so bad, but it's impossible. All right. Moving along. I put a poll question up. This is what I was talking about. I put, Packers fans, do you agree with the Packers refusing to pay the remainder of Jaire Alexander's full contract? Yes, I side with the Packers. No, the contract was fine. So 75% of the fan base, as of 5 o'clock my time, there were 144 votes. And out of the 144 votes, 75% of the votes said they sided with the Packers. So seems like it's pretty unanimous. Now you look at some comments on Twitter, and you would think that it was quite the opposite. And again, some people in the chat, as Bates said from Whoville in here earlier as well. So, all right. So again, that's just kind of the breakdown of the Jaire situation up to this point. Now, we're going to shift gears, but we're going to stay on topic, but shift gears a little bit and jump into coverage conversation here, okay? And I want to give a shout out to our Patreon group, and specifically Greg Rice asked this question. You can see right here at the top of the page. Since we know Jai is gone, I'm even more concerned with our cornerback room. Please review the cornerback grades in the final game versus Philly. If you feel super industrious, add the last losses to Detroit, Minnesota, and Chicago. So you said grades, and I'm assuming you're talking about PFF grades. Now, you guys know how I feel about PFF grades. We use it. I give PFF grade updates on this show every single week during the season. But again, there's many times that I look at the grades and I go, boy, I wish I had some tape to back that up. I wish they would show we gave a -2 on this specific play or a +1 on this specific play. It's like you're arguing or you're debating with someone that doesn't even truly exist, right? It's like there's nothing there to go, here's what I seen. It's just simply, here are the grades, right? And that's why I have a hard time with it, because they don't earmark the individual plays. They just throw a grade up there, and that'd be real easy to just kind of mail it in, if that makes sense. So let's start here. First of all, I want to say this. He asked specifically about PFF grades from the Philly game, right? The coverage grade in the Philly game was 74.4. If you guys remember, we held Jalen Hurts pretty well in check in that game. The defense played outstanding. It was the offense that could not put anything together. Again, why are we so concerned with losing a cornerback who, by the way, the knock on him was he wasn't even on the field last year? He played, once again, 50% of the snaps or less than 50, whatever it was. He's played less than 50% of the snaps, I think they said, over the last 4 years. Guys, that is insane. Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, 101 is the two most important abilities a player can have is availability and accountability, right? Now, again, you guys know how I felt. I wanted Jaire back. I felt like the team was better with him on it. I would have been okay with leaving the contract the way it was. It wouldn't have been the end of the world, but I can also understand where Goody's coming from and wanting to get some of that money back as well. Availability. What would you grade? Everybody in the chat, as quick as possible. Get ready to answer here. A to F. What would you grade Jaire's availability the last 4 years of his career here? The last 4 years, right? What would you grade his availability? Because I would give it an F. Like, D, I'm seeing, here we go. Let's go to the chat here. Holmes says F. Bates says D. Deadfish says D. I can understand a D as well, right? Dang. G-Dog Brawls 233 said a B. All right. That's surprising. Joseph said C minus. Coach Lynn says D minus. That's right there where I'm at. Zacchaeus Earl says F minus. All right. Sam, the Packer fan, or Sam _ Packer fan says C. All Good says F minus. Mike Berry says D. Austin says 50% is an F, guys. Come on, get your head out of here. But AFAM says incomplete. Zacchaeus said, nah, I give him a Z. Ed Madden says D, right? For the last 2 years, Joseph says F. Very, very specific there. I like it, right? So if we give him a D to an F in availability, now let's talk accountability, okay? What would you grade him in accountability? And what does accountability mean? To me, it means a number of things. It means playing within the scheme. It means being accountable to your teammates, right? You guys remember last year was the first time that he came to OTAs, first time in a while. If I remember correctly, the previous 2 years he skipped out on OTAs. And he came last year with Jeff Hafley rolling into town, right? That's accountability, in my opinion. Like, you don't have to be there, but if you want to be accountable to your teammates, accountable to the scheme, accountable to your coaches, you should be there. So he skipped out on that. He got suspended because he wanted to be a captain, just self-appointed captain, so he missed the game for being suspended, right? That's an accountability issue. Let's talk about what was the other thing I just had on the tip of my tongue here? Let me think. You had the suspension thing. You had the other thing. That wasn't the first time he had an issue with not being a captain. You guys remember the year before, the team picked the captain. His teammates didn't vote him a captain. He got mad over that. So I feel like that falls under accountability. Accountability also is your performance on the field. I think we would all agree he's a really good player on the field. I think he's a number one caliber cornerback. I believe that. However, it is what it is. Let's see what everybody's saying in terms of accountability. I think we're picking up right here. Joseph says F. I think that's a little harsh, Joseph. I would probably go B to C, but hey, respect your opinion. There you go. Holmes says B minus. I think that's very, very fair. Chris the Casual Win says D minus in accountability. Okay. Ed Madden says D. Let's see. G-Dog Brawls 233 says B. Man, you're really high on him then, man. So you think he was accountable and he was available. So, all right, there you go. So let's look at these coverage grades. Again, against the Philadelphia Eagles, 74.4. Now, let's compare apples to apples. Let's go all the way back to week 1, the last time we played the Philadelphia Eagles. Jaire was playing in that game. He was not playing in the wild card game where we got a 74.4 coverage grade. And this is if you believe in PFF. I don't think it's everything. The coverage grade in week 1 when Jaire was in the lineup, 51.2. And I know you're thinking, he got an interception in that game, Clayton. He did. He also probably got a negative mark because he broke off of his he literally completely left his zone wide open and just broke off into the end zone to break on the ball, right? That's going to give a negative mark. But nonetheless, Jaire finished that game with a 40-something, in the 40s coverage grade. So if we're comparing apples to apples, both Philadelphia games, our coverage was better without Jaire in that specific game. And again, the question was specifically asking about the Philadelphia Eagles game there in the playoffs, all right? So it was also asking if you want to go a little bit further. Let's look into the NFC North games. Okay, against the Chicago Bears in Week 18, our coverage grade was a 69.6. Not bad, right? It was horrible against the Vikings, a 44.9. And then if you go up to the Detroit Lions in Week 14, it was a 61.7. Now you're getting into the bad territory again, right? Against the Bears in Week 11, it was 55.7. That is bad. Against Detroit, it was 59.9 in Week 9. And I think that was the the Vikings earlier in the year, 57.1. So PFF said we played really bad coverage against the NFC North teams. Now we need to go back, and you guys might be able to fact check it quicker than me in terms of whether Jair was playing in those games or not. I will say this, though. If you key in on the last 4 games of the season, really the last 5 games of the season, where Jair is missing the games, look at our coverage grades, guys. Seattle, 82.8. New Orleans Saints, 75.3. Vikings, 44.9. Really bad. Bears, 69.6. Not horrible. And then 74.4 against the Super Bowl champions. If that's how the Packers graded out their coverage, hell, if you went 3 games before that, you got San Francisco 72.9, then a 63.6, 61.7. They played their best cover games, most consistent coverage games in the back half of the season when Jair was missing. He went back out. What game was it, guys, that he got hurt originally? It was Jacksonville, right? So, yeah, Jacksonville, he got hurt in that game. So you had your best game at an 87.0 against the Arizona Cardinals. I'm assuming he played in that game, but he may not have. It was weird all year because he was like, one week he was available, the next week he wasn't, and he tweaked the injury in Jacksonville and then tried to come back. He tried to come back. What was it, the Chicago game? At Chicago, he tried to come back, and then they end up having to pull him. And then from that point forward, your coverage grades without Jair were 72, 63, 61, 82, 75, 44, 69, and 74. So hopefully that answered the question there for Greg Rice. Now let's dive into them individually. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen. I'll try to read it off to you. Looking at the coverage grades for Carrington Valentine, let's key in on the last 5 games of the season, okay? Because those are the games where Jair was out or whatever. Seattle, 90.4. Then next week, New Orleans, 70. I think it's a 78.2. Next week, Minnesota, 70.9. Carrington Valentine, right? And then Chicago, 72.9. And then he did struggle against Philly at a 47.3. However, it is worth mentioning, even with that grade, he only gave up 38 yards receiving, Carrington Valentine. You're seeing what Goody and them are seeing right here. 90, 78, 70, 72, and then that 47, only giving up 38 yards, however. They probably looked up and said, damn, Carrington playing just as good a ball as Jair is right now. And it seemed like he did ramp it up at the end of the year. And again, most of the time you got to look at these players and go, hey, it's a half the season top thing. They like to break it down in quarters and grade players through the quarter of the season. 4 games, 4 games, 4 games, 4 games. Back half of the season, Carrington played his best football. So that's worth mentioning. Keyshawn Nixon, in that Philly game, it was a 60.2, is that what that? Yeah, 60.2. And then the week before, 60.3, 49.8, 51.5, 53.6. His best game was at Detroit, 84.8. So Keyshawn had a stint there from week 12, 13, and 14 where he was an 84, 73, 84 coverage grade. So you're seeing the ceiling for Keyshawn is 84 on the year. But the floor, unfortunately, is probably the Minnesota game, 43.6. So he really struggled against the Vikings, grading out in the 40s in coverage both games. Moving along to Javon Bullard. This one might surprise you guys. Again, I think he played his best football in the slot, all right? And let's look at that, and hopefully we could key in on it here. Let's go the last 5 games of the season. Playing strong safety, a 53.5 coverage grade. Me no like you that, Jan, right? And then he jumped over into the slot against the Detroit Lions in week 14, 37.5. Yuck, right? Then you go to fast forward to week 17, he's playing safety again, 41.1. That's horrible, right? And then against Chicago in week 18, 71.3, playing the slot. And then, of course, a 76.6 against the Philadelphia Eagles in the wild card game. So two of his top 4 coverage grades, he being Javon Bullard playing the slot, came the last 2 games of the season. So that showed a little bit of promise. Now, his best game of the year was playing slot corner against San Francisco, where he had an 87.8 or 87.0. The moral of the story is his highest graded game on the year was an 87 where he played slot corner. Okay. His lowest on the year was slot corner against Detroit. And then he finished the year with 71 and a 76 PFF grade. So, and again, is Javon Bullard going to play the slot this year? I don't know. It kind of feels like it's going to be Nate Hobbs in the slot. I could be wrong. But when we're in the nickel, he'll play in the slot. You're going to have Keyshawn on the outside and Carrington on the outside. I feel really, really good that it's going to be Carrington and Keyshawn on the outside, Nate Hobbs in the slot. When you go to your base, probably going to be a camp battle to determine is it going to be Carrington Valentine or Keyshawn Nixon playing on the outside when you're in your base 4-3. And with that being said, I think they would probably lean toward Keyshawn Nixon playing on the boundary in that regard. Jerry with the super chat. Thank you so much, Jerry. We appreciate you. Great Carrington stats for the final games. A workplace Valentine for love. Oh, I like it. Valentine for love. Love it. Yeah, again, I was very low on Carrington his rookie year. And this is a reason why we should kind of pump the brakes on rookies. And if they hit the 60s, it's like, in terms of PFF grade, typically pretty good. He was also, if I remember correctly, I want to say he led the team in passer rating when targeted, according to NFL Pro. So Carrington, pretty solid performance there last year. And his grade improved from the 50s, and it jumped into the mid-60s last year, I believe, which I know it's a sophomore year. It's not his rookie year, but still not bad. Not bad for a second-year player there. Taking that, you're looking for that incremental growth, and that's what you've seen in Carrington, in my opinion. I want to apologize in advance. My wife just pulled in. She has not been here for 4 days. She just got back from Chicago. You're going to hear these dogs lose their mind when they find out she's downstairs, and there's nothing I can do about it, okay? So just if you're listening with earbuds, you're on the pod, be ready to yank them out of your ear because it's going to get really bad here, and it's going to sound like somebody's breaking into the house. So, all right. Thank you, Jerry, for the super chat. Next, Jair Alexander. Let's look here. Is this not hard to look at, guys? Like, seriously. Look at how little he played last year. So it was weeks 1, 2, and 3. And then he came back in weeks 6, 7, and 8. Then he popped back in for 1 game in week 11, and then he was done for the year. His PFF grades. Look at this one, week 1 against Philly. 45.9. And if you're going, okay, PFF isn't everything, I agree with you. However, go back and watch A.J. Brown absolutely cook him in man coverage. I got so tired of hearing, Jair needs to follow the number 1. Jair needs to follow the number 1. Well, you got to play man coverage if you're going to do that, first of all, okay? They were in man coverage. He followed A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown cooked him on a double move. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. And it's funny because some of the sports talk junkies were blaming Bullard for taking a bad angle on the tackle. That has nothing to do with Jair getting cooked. They were playing single high man. He bit on a double move underneath. We've seen it over and over and over. It worked out in Tennessee with the pick 6, but I remember watching that from the stands going, boy, he was not supposed to jump that route. Glad he did. When it works, you cheer. When you get cooked by A.J. Brown on biting on a double move, you're ticked off about it. So here was Jair's PFF grades. Again, availability was absolutely horrible. Nobody's arguing that, right? 45, 69, 90, that was at Tennessee, 82 against Arizona. Then he drops to a 59 against Houston, 72 against Jacksonville, 65 at Chicago. I'm sorry, man. That I don't look at those grades and go, boy, he's way better than Carrington Valentine. He's definitely better, but he's, a better, what am I trying to say here? He's a more seasoned vet, So, yeah. All right. So that was Jair's numbers. Now, again, why am I not overly concerned about the cornerback? I've seen people talking about the cornerback room like they're one of the worst in the league. Keep in mind, Jair only played weeks 1 through 3. Then he came back in weeks 6 and 7 and 8, came back in week 11, and then missed the rest of the year. So this whole thing that they're going to be horrible without him, guys, we've already seen how they look without him. We've already seen it. He was the worst graded coverage grade of our entire cornerback room in week 1 against Philly. So keep that in mind. This is why I'm not concerned. EPA per pass last year, the Green Bay Packers were 3rd in the National Football League in EPA per pass. That's expected points added. Okay, third best at a minus 0.13. The only teams that were better were the Philadelphia Eagles at minus 0.17 and the Denver Broncos at minus 0.18. That's a top 3 passing defense, according to NFL Pro EPA per pass. All right, moving along. Yak over expected plays a big role as well, right? Yak over expected. The Green Bay Packers finished third in the league, only allowing plus 144 yak over expected. That was third best in the league. Once again, top 3 in that pass defense category. Now, yards per pass play is kind of that efficiency, right? Like how efficient are you at stopping the pass? So yards per pass play, it's exactly what it sounds like. Every time your opponent drops back and throws the ball, how many yards are you averaging giving up? Okay, that includes it's not just the completions. That includes the incompletions. You round it all down or average it all up, right? The Philadelphia Eagles were first at 5.1. Then the Broncos, the Texans, the Chargers, the Jets, the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the 49ers, the Titans, the Commanders, and the Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers were tied for 9th best with the Titans, Commanders, and the Vikings last year. And again, that statistic was yards per pass play. So if you go to EPA per pass, we were third. Yards per pass play, we were not. This according to NFL Pro. Pro Football Focus had it at 8, so it was actually a little bit better. I went with the lower number here to kind of balance things out and give you worst case scenario. With that being said, I'm not overly concerned with the pass defense. I'm not. Just like I wasn't concerned with the pass rush last year. Because, again, it's one thing if you turn on the tape and you go, man, they just can't get any pressure. It's another thing when you turn on the tape and you see them keying in on the run and protecting the rush lanes. And, of course, you're going to have the yards per whatever, or I'm sorry, the time to hit, the time to the quarterback or time to throw is going to be up when you're keying on our rush lanes and you're not just pinning your ears back and going after the quarterback. But the other thing that happens there, the byproduct is you finish second best in the league in rushing defense with yards per attempt allowed, yards per carry allowed. So, again, another huge factor. Now, what is the most important stat? You guys know I talk about this all the time. Outside of points allowed, what's the most important statistic you can have in football? It's turnover differential. Well, you can't have a good turnover differential if you're not forcing turnovers. Last year, the Packers were third best in the league, averaging 0.9 interceptions per game. We were top 3 in takeaways in terms of interceptions. All right. We were top 3. Here they go. They're about to get loud. Lincoln's the first one to recognize it. I'm ready to hit the mute button to try to save y'all's ears. Now, all right. I got to wait a minute. He's still checking it out. He's like, somebody's downstairs, dude? So we finished top 3 in interceptions. We finished top 3 in All right, I apologize. Let me shut this door real quick. Give me just a second. All right, we're back. Wasn't too bad, hopefully. Like a well-oiled machine over here. So again, EPA per pass, we're top 3. Yards per passing attempt. We were or yards per pass play, I should say. We were eighth on PFF, not NFL Pro, and then we were third in interceptions. Why are we freaking out about the DB room? Somebody help me with that. Because, again, is the team better with Jaire on it? Yes. That's why I said I would be okay with paying that contract. You guys understand, I would have voted no to that. I would have voted no to the poll question I put out earlier. And I was really surprised that the majority of the Packer fans were, yes, I side with the Pack. I think it's awesome because I wasn't like so crazy in, at one angle. I wasn't so crazy at one angle like, yeah, you need to bring him back no matter what. And I wasn't, yes, I side with the Packers fully. I can understand both sides of the argument, but I'm thinking, you know what? Why not let him play this year out? And if he stays healthy and he's extra motivated and he goes out there and gives you a great performance, you can move on next year if you want to, right? You can go that route. So, is where it is. So, Greg Rice is spamming the hell out of this chat. Clayton versus Philly. CV was targeted 7 times. There were 6 completions. Which Philly game, bub? Be specific there. Which one you talking about? And please don't spam the chat like that, man. That's ridiculous. All right. And try to be nice about it, but we're trying to stay on topic and cover all these analytics, all these statistics. And when you spam the chat like that, that's a little frustrating. Which game are you talking about, man? Let me know. Let me know. All right. Which game are you talking about? Week 1 or the playoff game there, Bo? Greg Rice. Maybe we'll come back to it. Okay, this is why I can't just take certain questions like that on the fly sometimes too. So anyway, that is the coverage breakdown and why I'm not overly concerned. Again, I think the team would be better with Jaire on it, but if you're at Pro Football Reference, well, we're talking about EPA and advanced analytics and watching the tape and this and that. Like, if we go to, let's do this real quick. Let's go back up. Shouldn't even probably be hitting on this. So notice here at the bottom, right, at Philly, that's the playoff game. 4 targets, 4 receptions. So that's 7 of 8. Not sure. Maybe PFF got it wrong. They're showing 38 yards there is what they're showing. If I were to go to NFL Pro, I don't think I've got it pulled up. I'm not really understanding why we're hung up on that one game too. Like that's, I don't know. It just seems a little, let's see. Let me go to, let me just a second. We should be wrapping this segment up, and I just want to check real quick. If we can get the NFL Pro, show all games. Hopefully it'll pull up. Eagles. Yeah, I can't get it to load. Not on the fly like this with NFL Pro. So, yeah, if Pro Football Reference may be right, I don't know. But how many yards is it saying he gave up? That's the other thing too. Like Pro Football Reference, it comes down to charting these too, Greg. We played predominantly zone last year. If you're playing zone defense, someone's got to make a determination of should that target and that catch go against him or on the safety. That's another thing that comes into play. So that's why these are important. So, yeah. Greg Rice says 66 yards. So Pro Football Reference is saying 66 yards and PFF is saying 38 yards is what they're showing. So there you go. All right, let's see. Reef says Valentine was beat 40 yards by a tight end. He was covering a tight end. That's one, like, was that like a man? Was he man coverage on a tight end, or were we in zone? Anyway, can't have that much dead air, that's for sure. So, Holmes is asking, what am I looking up? I think we're pretty clear what we're talking about here, Buck. CV got burned so hard by Philly in that playoff game. I'm so tempted to go to the tape real quick and try to find the targets. I'm really, really tempted because I don't, as a matter of fact, I'm trying to think of how many yards we actually gave up. Does anybody remember, if I can go back here, anybody remember how many yards, what's his name, passed for? Because I want to say it was like 122, if I remember correctly. Talking about the stiff arm. Oh, did he get stiff armed? Is that what? There you go. Bates. They passed for 131 yards. Evidently, CV gave up all the yards. That's another thing. Like, when you look at the Philly game, you look back at it. We didn't lose because of Philly's passing game, So, yeah, 131 yards looks like there. So, 200 total. Got it. Yeah, corners get cooked. Are we just yelling to yell at this point? Yeah, it kind of feels that way, Bungie. So, I guess what Greg's saying, let's get rid of Valentine. Valentine, he had the best passer rating when targeted last year, according to NFL Pro. 2 interceptions as well. I want to say he was tied for the amongst the corners in interception lead there with Jaire. They both had 2. So, yeah, there it was. 169 total rushing yards. Yeah, they ran the ball for sure. So, there it is. Ron Sample. Everyone remembers CV getting stiff-armed twice. He's solid in my book. So there you go. That makes sense. That makes sense. All right. That explains it. So, all right. That's going to do it for hour one. For those of you listening on the pod, we will see you on the other side for hour two. We are going to hit a couple other things. We're going to talk about Elgton Jenkins. We got a little bit of an update there. I think it's good news. We're going to hit that on the other side. And then we will also dive into some NFC North talk if we have time. So we appreciate y'all. We'll see you on the other side. Appreciate it. All right. Welcome into hour two. Let's talk some Elgton Jenkins now. Moving along. We were way behind schedule. Let's talk about what happened with Elgton today. So it was reported earlier today that the Packers center Elgton Jenkins reported to mandatory minicamp. I heard Wildy talk about it. There was a couple other people that tweeted about it as well. It sounds like it was pretty much confirmed. So starting center Elgton Jenkins is reported for this week's mandatory minicamp. Early rumors are that Jenkins plans on attending but not participating in the minicamp until a resolution is reached on his current contract. Although it's not perfect news, it is a step in the right direction for Matt LaFleur to have his most experienced offensive lineman in-house, where hopefully negotiations will now ramp up. I think that this is acting in good faith. Brian Bulaga talked about this the other day on Wildy and Tausch. They said if Elgton Jenkins came to you, Brian Bulaga, and asked you for advice, what advice would you give him? He'd say, show up. He said, show up to camp in good faith, but do not participate in anything, because if you get hurt, you are screwing yourself. So withhold your services while in camp to let them know, hey, look, I'm here. I'm serious. I want to do this, but you got to give me some more guaranteed money. So when you look at Elgton Jenkins's current contract, right? His current contract, he is in 2025, 30 years old, right? This year here, his cap hit is $17.6 million. The dead cap is $9.6 million attached. So you can move on from him and free up roughly $8 million if you wanted to. We know we don't want to. Now, why is he wanting more money? You'll notice the dead cap shrinks to $4.8 million next year. All right. So obviously that's the Packers can free up $20 million if they cut bait next year. He will be 31 years old next year. So it kind of feels like Goody is looking at this like, hey, let's move Elgton to center. He played center in college. This is probably our best move to kind of just a little stopgap in that situation there. And then if next year we get a better option at center, then you just cut bait. You cut bait, you free up $20 million. Elgton knows that. And Elgton knows, okay, if they kick me over to center, my value goes down now in terms of average annual value across the league playing center as opposed to guard. Guard typically get paid a little bit more. You guys know how I feel about that. I think center is more important than guard. That's just me personally. But if that number is going to go down, he's trying to protect himself going, look, if I'm going to move to a position that is going to pay less on average, then give me a little more guaranteed money. So we've been pretty vocal about this, that I think they should try to guarantee a little bit more money. Maybe meet him in the middle and say, hey, look, you know what, Elgton, let's guarantee your cap hits $17.6 million this year. Let's tack on another $5 million in guarantee. Now, Elgton may not like that. Elgton may say, no. I want a 3-year deal. And if that's the case, then you just got to play hardball, let him sit out through offseason. He'll report after training camp, and he'll be on your roster for 1 year. I think he's professional enough. Elton's been one of those dudes that he would play the year out and not try to cause a stink, but he's going to withhold his services. In the meantime, you got to get Jacob Monk reps. You got to get Sean Ryan reps, and that's what's going to happen in camp. And to me, that's the best way that you can put a little more pressure on Elgton Jenkins by letting these other guys get the reps while he's in-house so he doesn't get fined. I want to say earlier today, I think it was Elgton Jenkins or it was Brian Bulaga that said it would be $50,000 a day if they miss. That sounded a little steep to me, and maybe they were talking about training camp as opposed to mandatory minicamp. But I think there is a fine attached to mandatory minicamp, so maybe it is $50,000 a year. So obviously he's not going to miss out on that money in that regard. So, all right. That's pretty much what's going on with Elgton Jenkins' contract at the moment. As Mandy is home, she brung all kinds of goodies. So she was up in Rockford, Illinois. Evidently, there's a big Packer presence in Rockford, Illinois. She got me all kinds of stuff. Look at this little vintage Green Bay Packers stuff. I'm going to show these on the air. This is going to be fun. Let's do it. So she found a bunch of old yearbooks. Check this out, guys. $5. 1992 yearbook, Green Bay Packers. All right. Pretty cool how they had it sketched out there, too. 1997 yearbook. These are in good shape, too. That's awesome. This one's probably going to be my favorite. 1993 yearbook, mint condition. Brett Favre on the cover. Pretty cool. And she got a Super Bowl year 96. All right. Got that one. We got a 94 with Reggie on the front. This is really cool. We got a Press Gazette Super Bowl year, Titletown. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, you hit the jackpot, girl. And then another special here, the Super Bowl champion one. So pretty darn sweet. That's awesome. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, I don't think these are still good, but look at the Wheaties box from the Super Bowl year. What are these people doing in Rockford selling this stuff for $10? What is going on? And then another cool one. Lombardi and Mike Holmgren on the cover of the Wheaties box. Pretty sweet. That's awesome. Low fat, by the way. She said, yeah, we got to get the low fat. So, thank you, baby. That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. I'm sure they appreciate that on the live on the air. That's good podcasting right there. But anyway, so with Elgton Jenkins, we'll have to edit all that out, obviously. So with Elgton Jenkins, there we go. Ron Sample. Thank you so much, Ron. He said it's $16,953 for the first day, $33,908 for the second day, and then $50,855 for the third day, totaling $101,716 for all 3 days. Wow, that's interesting. So when they said the $50,000, they were probably thinking about the max there on the third day when Bulaga was talking about that. So nonetheless, he's not going to miss out on that money. He's already missed out on, I think, $500,000 workout or off-season workout bonus there. So that money starts to add up. I don't care how much money you're making, you know. So yeah. There you go. There's the Elgton Jenkins update. I think it's good news. I think they're going to be a step closer to a resolution here. Part of me worries that Goody's going to play too hard a ball, right? And tick him off. And then, you know, maybe he just says, hey, look, I'm holding out till week one, and they end up trading him out. I want to see what this offensive line can do with Elgton at center. But then again, man, he may withhold services and then come in week one, and that's just how this thing plays out. We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out there. But there's your Elgton Jenkins update. Also, just threw that in there for everybody on the Patreon group. Again, just a reminder: the Packers cap space being $45 million here in 2024. You've got room, man. You got room to make this happen. That's why I'm kind of like, if he's asking for a 3-year extension, I can't do that, you know. But if he's saying, hey, sweeten the pot a little bit, and that's what Bulaga seems to think the situation is, then do it, right? I think you sweeten the pot a little bit and and make that happen. Hey, fam, in the chat, we should have traded Jair for any extra kidney for Musgrave. Man, that's still wild that Musgrave played through that internal bleeding. So, all right. There is your Elgton Jenkins update. Now let's talk about NFC North. Andy Monday asked a great question over in our Patreon group, and I haven't even mentioned this. People are going, hey, how do I join the Patreon group? Here is how you join. Just go to patreon.com/PackerFan total access, or scan the QR code in the upper right. Be a member of the $3 tier, get you access to everything. And I'm trying to do things a little bit different with the questions. I don't know how much time I'll have to be able to do it more consistently, but just trying to incorporate people's questions into a quick write-up. That way we can do screen grabs and provide all the information here. So again, patreon.com/PackerFan total access. Andy Monday with a great question here says, what are some key factors to the Packers turning their 1-5 divisional record from 2024 into a 5-1 mark in 2025? Obviously, it's not that cut and dry. You know, it's not just like, well, we fixed this one thing. We're going to, because every year is different. Different problems are going to pop up next year, just like things are going to go better next year in certain aspects as well. So what I did was I went through and said, all right, let's grab all of these games real quick, right? And kind of see what happened in them. I think I got them all. Hopefully I did. I think I got all 6. I believe I did. Maybe I might have missed out on 1 or 2. But anyway, week 4 versus the Vikings. We lost that game 31-29. You can see the Packers came roaring. I felt really good about this, the way that game ended and how they battled back, scoring 22 points in the fourth quarter, and the defense kind of buckling down and holding the Vikings to only 3 points in the second half. Thought they really rebounded well. So you guys know what I'm going to look at first is turnover differential. We lost the turnover battle. We lost it 4-3. We threw 3 interceptions in that game. We fumbled. We lost 1 fumble as well. They threw 1 interception, and they lost 2 fumbles. So when you lose the turnover differential by 1, you got like a 70% chance of losing, whatever it is. It's in the 70 percentile. So to me, that's the story of that game. Now, let's go back to the coverage talk, right? Like, okay, was the coverage a problem last year? Passing-wise, we outpassed the Minnesota Vikings 379 yards to 254. Now, it's worth noting when a team is leading by that much, as they were leading 28-7 going into halftime, they're going to start to run the ball a little bit more and pull away from the pass. But nonetheless, holding them to 254 yards passing, I don't think that's a horrible day at the office. Now, he was very efficient, 20 of 28, but you were still able to take the ball away once there with an interception. I think, if I remember correctly, that was an Xavier McKinney interception on the left hash, if I remember. I want to say they were playing a cover 2, and he broke all the way across the – no. Remember, they ran Aaron Jones – I don't know how I remember this. Aaron Jones out on a wheel route, and Xavier McKinney was supposed to be playing a hook curl, and he just broke completely off his zone and went and got the damn football. It was absolutely awesome. So, again, what do we got to do? Back to Andy Monday's original question, what do we got to do to go 5-1 as opposed to 1-5? You got to clean up these interceptions here, man. You got to. You can't throw 3 interceptions in a game, expect to win. So there is your week 4 answer against the Vikings. Moving on to week 9 against the Lions. Against the Lions, you end up losing 24-14. You guys know it was this monsoon. It was raining at Lambeau Field, so that played a big role in obviously how you were going to call the game. Once again, let's go to the turnovers. And you lost the turnover battle 1-0. You guys remember that interception actually got flipped into a touchdown. It was a pick 6 where Jordan scrambled right. Some were saying it was a blown block. Others were trying to blame Tucker Kraft on the play. Josh Jacobs wasn't even supposed to be in the pass route. He helped block and then snuck out of the backfield. Jordan tried to hit him, and I'm trying to think of who it was that picked it off and took it for 6. Was it Kirby Joseph? Am I thinking right? But anyway, you lost the turnover differential 1-0 in that game, and obviously you get that defensive touchdown there, that 1 touchdown. Now you end up losing by 10, so let's look for another factor in. That's a 7-point swing. So what do you think was the biggest determining factor in why the Packers lost that other 3 points, I guess you could say? And when you look at the box score here, or the team statistics, we held their passing game in check. 137, we had 273. Now, their yards per pass attempt was 6. Ours was a full yard better at 7. The big thing I remember in that game was it felt like the Lions were just like, you know what? We're just going to kind of lay back and not lose this ball game. They played very conservative, and it ended up winning them the ball game because of that pick 6. That's a hard thing to come back from. Look at the penalties, too. Penalties, we had 10 penalties for 67 yards. They only had 5 for 51. 16 yards ain't a huge difference, but that 10 penalties, my gosh. If I remember correctly, too, when we broke this down, I think me and Jacob did this breakdown. Maybe Tim was in here, too. I want to say Josh Jacobs had a touchdown run late in that game as well, or maybe it was before halftime, and it got called back for a hold. So there you go. If I had to break that game down, I would say the pick 6 was huge. And then, obviously, the penalties were the other factor there. So, to answer Andy Monday's question here on Week 9 versus the Lions at Lambeau Field in the rain, turnovers, mental mistakes, penalties, right? That's the big thing. And again, just as we said, the team's going to be a little bit older this year. You end up cutting loose of Jair, who was 28 years old, so that's going to bring the average age back down. I don't, obviously that's not going to hurt you with the penalties on the offensive side of the ball, I wouldn't imagine. So I don't think it's going to trickle over or anything like that. But all right, next, week 11 at the Bears. You won that game by 1 point. And I just wanted to point that out real quick. And I definitely didn't grab all the games, but I grabbed a handful of them here. Why did we win that game, right? It looks like we actually turned the ball over. We lost the turnover differential in that game. We threw another interception, or else that game wouldn't have been as close as it was. What did the Bears do well here? Let's look at the penalties. Where are the penalties at? They were penalized way more. So even though this was a win for the Packers, I just wanted to mix it up a little bit. I don't really know what kept them in that game. Was it third down efficiency? They were 9 of 16 on third down. Yep, there you go. We were 1 of 5 on third down. We were 0 for 1 on fourth down. There it is. There's the number you're looking for. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down conversions. So what do you do about that? You try to stop a fourth down play the same as you try to stop a first down, a second down, a third down play, right? Great call there, Deb Fish. If it's true, time of possession, they had the ball for 13 minutes longer than we did, and that goes hand in hand with that fourth down efficiency, right? So that probably plays the biggest role in that game. So there you go. Week 14 at the Lions. The Lions obviously beat us by 3 points in this game here. And when we go back and look at it, let's start with the turnovers. The turnover differential was 1-1. We lost a fumble, I think. Yeah, we lost a fumble, and they threw an interception. So your turnover differential was 1-1. But once again, look at the time of possession. They had the ball for, once again, 13 more minutes than we did. So that's a big determining factor there. Let's look at the penalties real quick. Penalties were pretty much spot on. They were tied. 7 for 59 for us, 7 for 56 for them. So it was all about time of possession. Now, let's go to typically it's the fourth down is what controls the time of possession, third down conversion, fourth down efficiency. We were 1 of 5 on third down. We did not go for it on fourth down. They were 7 of 15 on third down, guys. 7 of 15, and they were 4 of 5 on fourth down. So you're seeing that fourth down defense is really what's hurting us, right? Ed Madden said, this is the game. The Jacobs touchdown was called back. Got it. Appreciate that. So there you go. So the tell of the tape here is turnover differential was 1-1, right? You're good there. The time of possession, 13 minutes, and it was a direct reflection of that fourth down efficiency for the Lions, which we know that's what they live and die by it. And, boy, they lived by it that day. So this is probably something that they want to put a little extra emphasis on, they being Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff, is third down and fourth down efficiency. Go back and self-scout. What did we call on those plays? What allowed them to put themselves in a position where they could go for it on fourth down? What did they convert on third down and try to tighten up a little bit? Now, we know, obviously, their OC is now in Chicago as the head coach. So going to be a little bit different this time around. We'll see how they adjust to the fourth down. I think as long as Dan Campbell's there, then they are going to continue to go for it on fourth down. That's just me personally. So Greg Rice says, how many third and fourth downs were tush push? I have no idea, Greg. I don't know. They don't do the tush push, right? In Detroit? Am I thinking right? I don't remember them doing the tush push. But nonetheless, I mean, whether it's a tush push or throwing the ball or whatever the play call is, man, you got to get better. You cannot allow a team to go 7 of 15 on third down and 4 of 5 on fourth down, where you only go 1 of 5 on third down. Man, that's that just can't do it and expect to win the ball game. They outpassed us in that game too, 280 to 199. Rushing wise, they outran. I mean, they just did everything better. They really did. Although I will say this, their yards per rush was only 3.3. It was just those extra possessions, right, converting on fourth down, that really was the big difference. So that was the difference in that game, in my opinion. So they were 11 of 15 on third and fourth down conversions, what Deb Fish says. I think that's spot on, man. That's going to be hard to win many ball games. That's how you score 34 points, right? Moving the ball and moving the sticks there on third and fourth down. All right, moving along. Week 17 at the Vikings. The Vikings come out and they win by 2 points in Minnesota. Let's see the turnover to start there. The turnovers was tied 1-1, so that wasn't the difference. We lost a fumble. They threw an interception, so not a huge thing there. Time of possession, they had the ball 11 minutes longer than we did. I guarantee you this is going to be a third down, fourth down conversion thing again, ain't it? Actually, no. We had a better third down efficiency of 8 of 14. They were 6 of 12. So we were slightly above 50%. They were right at the 50% mark. We went for it on fourth down one time and did not get it. So what sticks out here the most, guys, is their total yardage. My goodness, man, 441. They had 6.3 yards per play. We finished at 4.8. Passing yards, they cut us apart at 372 while we only had 167. And their efficiency was off the charts, man. 33 of 43 while we were 19 of 30. Their yards per pass was 8.5. So the story of this game was definitely the passing defense. There's no two ways about that. So definitely struggled with the pass defense on that game there. So let's see what Mr. Jazz says here in the chat. I agree with you. A tag me says, Clay, I agree with you that cornerback isn't a tier 1 position, but in all caps, with the emphasis teams are putting on passing over the last decade, do you think that's an outdated way of thinking? I think of the Eagles, right? What was their strength this year? They won the Super Bowl. Their strength was running the football, right? You go back to and playing defense, of course. You go back to the Chiefs the year before, and we're just talking most recently. Since you kind of mentioned it's outdated, let's try to think most recently. The Chiefs passed the ball pretty well, but they took a step back that last Super Bowl year. It was their defense that was dominant. They had like a top 2, maybe the best defense in the league. So the commonality between the Eagles and the Chiefs wasn't that they were passing the ball well. It was they both played really good defense, with one having a great running game and the other having a better passing attack. Although Pacheco's a good running back, right? I feel like he's been pretty effective. The year before was the Chiefs as well. Their passing game was a lot better that year, if I remember correctly. So it's kind of like out of the last 3 years, you would say defense, pass. So, yeah. But the Eagles, man, their running game was dominant last year, as I remember. It's a great question there, though, Mr. Jess. I still wouldn't put corner at tier 1 because, again, if you put a cornerback, if you spend all your money on cornerback, and I'm not saying you have to spend all your money to have a tier 1, although once their contract comes due, you got to pay them, right? It's easy for an offense to go away from that corner. We're just not going to throw his way. Now that asset is isolated. But if you've got a really good pass rush, you guys know how I feel about 3-tech, you got a dominant 3-tech, he affects the running game and the passing game, right? And again, the way to compensate for having a lackluster pass defense, which I don't think the Packers had, although that was the tell of this game here against the Vikings. Horrible pass defense game here. The best way to help your pass defense and your coverage is get pressure in that quarterback's face, right? And there's no better place to get pressure than at the 3-tech. Get you a 1-tech over there in your nickel to try to occupy a double team. And when you go in 3-tech, the whole point of the 3-tech is you playing on the outside shoulder of the guard. It's harder for the center. The center cannot help block if you're rushing the outside shoulder of the guard in that 3-tech. So, yeah, that would be my only, I don't want to say argument, but pushback, I guess, there in that regard, Jess. It all comes down to, like, what would you rather have? Because you can't have everything, right? I would rather have a dominant 3-tech push in the pocket or a dominant edge defender, albeit if you've got a dominant edge defender, they can slide the protection and isolate him. We've seen them do it with Gary from time to time. We know that's what happened. Like T.J. Watt last year was less than 10% pressure rate. He's drawn a bunch of attention. Same thing with Max Crosby. So you have a little bit easier job isolating an edge defender as opposed to a 3-tech, but you can completely isolate a dominant corner if you just don't throw his way. Now you can mold the defense to play in a way that, hey, we're going to force you to throw this way because we're going to bracket cover other guys, right? Like, many people didn't understand what Bill Belichick did with his bullseye defense. He played predominantly man coverage, and rather than put his number 1 corner on their number 1 receiver, what he would do is put his number 1 corner on their number 2 receiver, and then he would take 2 lesser players and double team their number 1. So he's forcing you to go to, rather than you going, okay, we're going to put our best guy on their best guy, and now we think our number 2 receiver is better than their number 2 corner. You've seen the Packers do that under Mike McCarthy all the time. Our receiving core was so deep that our number 2 wide receiver was consistently better than pretty much every team's number 2 corner, right? So if a team played 2-man under, you could cook their number 2 if you had a good enough receiving core, whether it be Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson early on while Greg Jennings was the number 1, or even James Jones in his prime, things like that. But what Belichick would do is say, hey, I'm going to put my number one corner on their number two target. That takes him completely out of the game plan. And we're going to bracket cover their number two receiver. That takes him out of the game. So now you got to go to the number three receiver. And if you guys remember, when Belichick was in his prime in New England, they came to Green Bay and played the Packers and Mike McCarthy, and Aaron Rodgers cut them up. I specifically remember Jordy Nelson cooking in that game. Because, again, when you've got a receiving core that's 3 and 4 deep, not a whole lot of defense is going to be effective against that, right? Again, players win them and coaches lose them. So, Week 18 against the Bears, we lost that game by 2 points. Now, I want to mention here, this is probably not a popular take, and I'm sure some people will call it a cop-out. We pulled Jordan Love in that game. You're without Jair, obviously, your number one corner. There was a lot of factors that came into play in that game. You end up pulling you pulled Jordan. Romeo Doubs missed because he was sick, and Christian Watson shredded his knee. So you're down now to your number 3 and 4 wide receiver and your backup quarterback. I tossed this game out the window. That's just me personally. They pulled Jordan like, yeah, this ain't even worth it. What are we even doing? They shouldn't have had Christian out there, which that still bothers me to this day, man, that they had Christian Watson out there. So anyway, what else stood out in this game other than that? If we were to say, let's pretend like all the starters were playing, what stood out in this game? Turnover differential was tied 2-2. You notice how we've only, of all these games, the one thing that sticks out, there was only one game that we've hit here that we won the turnover differential. Y'all notice that? So even though a lot of these games are tied, 2-2 or tied 1-1, if you don't throw that one interception, if you don't fumble that one ball, you win the turnover differential by 1, you probably win the game. So that is worth mentioning. I don't want to just completely brush that off just because you tied the turnover differential. You got to protect the football better. That's a common theme that we're seeing here. Penalties, the Bears were actually penalized more, 7 for 45, although we had the same amount of yardage for 45 yards. We only had 5 penalties, so that's kind of a push. I would call that a push for sure. Third down and fourth down efficiency. Here it is again, guys. Once again, third down efficiency. The Bears were 7 of 14, and then they were 1 of 1 on fourth down. We were 3 for 10 and 0 for 1. So we were sitting at 30% third down efficiency, while they were at 50%. They were 100% on fourth down, albeit one try, and we were 0%, just one try. So that's another common theme we're seeing here, is not converting on third down. So that's something to definitely think about as we go into training camp as well. Now, I know a lot of the wide receiver drops came on third down. I remember people specifically talking about that. So that definitely comes into factor as well. But yeah, something to keep our eye on there. So again, what did we learn? It's multifaceted. And again, I want to shout out Andy Monday for posing this question. It's multifaceted. Mainly turnover differential. Penalties came into play a little bit. If I had to rate these, I would say it's turnover differential number 1, third down efficiency on both sides of the ball number 2, and then penalties number 3 is how I would kind of rank the most important aspects that played into us going 1-5 in the division. All those things you can control. You can control how aggressive you are with the football, and that's why Jordan's got to get better at that. There's no two ways about it. And we've got to get more efficient on third down. Now, I think another thing that comes into play on third and fourth down, especially third down, I should say, is being too aggressive, throwing the ball down the field, not taking the check downs. Now, some of that is play design, but I think a good chunk of that was Jordan not taking the check down and specifically not getting the check down on time, on schedule. That makes sense. So that's another thing that kind of comes into play for me as well. So hopefully that answered your question there, Andy Monday, and thank you so much for asking. I think that was a great question, and just want to make sure we covered everything. Now let's end it with a couple more questions in here in the Patreon group that we had keyed up, and let's just we've already hit some of them, so you'll see them already marked with target on them. Let's scroll back up here. This is a long one. I'm going to read it here from Greg, so bear with me. I'm a horrible public reader. But here we go. I'm a few days back on the pods, and I like to slide to and like to a slightly different opinion when looking at some of the odds for this year's Super Bowl. Truthfully, I am not a gambler, so this may not make any sense. All right, we're off to a strong start here. I'm going to read this whole thing, and he prefaced it with, it probably won't make sense. In my head, the odds for the Super Bowl is a combination of how strong the team is and how easy their path to the Super Bowl is. The expected strength of schedule for the NFC West is the easiest in the entire NFL, while the NFC North is the hardest. So talking about, playing NFC West teams as opposed to North teams, I completely agree with that. So the West teams will likely have an inflated record and have a better home field advantage in the playoffs, making their chances to the Super Bowl easier. Although I got to push back a little bit there, Greg. I mean, we've seen our home field advantage, right, in the playoffs the last few times that we've hosted playoff games. I think it's kind of a crapshoot nowadays. It really is. Another interesting odds line that supports this is, quote, to miss the playoffs, the NFC teams is defending order. Number 1, the Eagles plus 290. 2, the 49ers plus 164. Lions are number 3 at plus 156. Rams plus 134. Bucks plus 124. Commanders plus 104. And the Packers minus 115, with the Vikings being minus 128. I think the Packers being minus money is more because of their tough schedule and less of them not being a playoff quality team. This also suggests the Packers' playoff chances really come down to beating the Vikings for the last playoff spot, which is now close to a toss-up. Similarly, as said before, I think the West teams have a higher chance because of their expected easier schedule, rather than them being actually a better team. The last point I have is looking at the team win totals. The expected wins for the NFC North is the Lions 10, Packers 9, Vikings 8, Bears 8. There's an one-game difference between playing at least one playoff home game, being the 7th seed, or missing the playoffs altogether. The margin is so small, and our division games are incredibly important, more so than most years. I think that's all a great point there, Greg, for sure. He said, lastly, I'm on vacation with the family, and my daughter's having trouble sleeping being away from home. I found that the only thing to put her to sleep is rocking her while listening to this dumb show. So thank you. Hey, appreciate that, man. Appreciate it. That's not the first time. I actually had somebody one time say, man, I turn your podcast on in the car when we're riding around, and it puts my daughter right to sleep. I was like, man, that ain't a good thing. I think he was trying to pay a compliment. I'm like, well, I'm boring as hell, right? You won't put the kids to bed, just turn on the pod. It puts everybody to sleep. We already hit the I agree. Oh, he said, I agree. The strength of schedule is a useless stat, which is why I used expected in the previous message. I was just using strength of schedule as verbiage because that's what the odds suggest. The 49ers have better odds than the Packers to make the playoffs, but the same exact odds to win the Super Bowl. Wouldn't this suggest they have an expected easier schedule? I don't think it's so much that, Greg. I think that the Niners were so banged up last year, they're expecting that team to kind of rise back to where, maybe not exactly where they were, but closer to where they were. I think it has more to do with them being healthy this year, personally. Now, they lost Debo, which Debo's been banged up the last couple of years anyway. He's been somewhat of a locker room problem as well. But I think it's got more to do with that than the strength of schedule. And the strength of schedule stuff, the reason I kind of roll my eyes at that is because every year we talk about this preseason and nobody brings it back up till the end of the year, and they adjust the strength of schedule based off how the teams played throughout the year. It's like, why did we even talk about it in the preseason if we're just going to change it by the end of the year? I don't know. It just never really resonated with me. So Andy Monday said, I know you mentioned it last week, but could you repeat the snap percentage for Rashawn and LVM for the 2024 season, as well as their snap percentage for after the Preston trade? Ryan did that great pod about the improved pass rush pressures. I'm wondering how the Preston trade may have positively impacted that. Could be a classic case of progress stopper. Yeah, and Preston, here's how you know it was a right move moving on from Preston. I don't have the time to go look at the numbers right now. Andy obviously reading it on the fly, but you know it was the right move because Preston's a free agent right now. You know, if he was so valuable, a team would have snatched him up. I heard some people saying, why not bring him back in? LVN had a better pressure rate, right? LVN played better. I think people are going to be surprised with LVN this year. And maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part, but I think if he gets his snap percentage up over 50%, maybe right around where Gary is or a little higher, I think what you're going to see happen is you're going to look up and he's going to have 8 or 9 sacks this year. And if he can maintain that 11% pressure rate or increase it to 13%, and you truly press into, hey, let's let Brenton Cox Jr. be that third rotational pass rusher and not feel like we got to throw Kingsley and Igbare out there every chance we get, I think that could help big time. I really do. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but progress stopping is a real thing. I know Bill Parcells talked about it a lot. He's where I heard that phrase coined. The seeing a veteran player on the field with someone with higher upside sitting on the bench being younger, that's a progress stopper, and you got to know when to, okay, it's time to turn the page and get that young guy on the field and let him take off. I think they made that decision there, obviously, at the trade deadline by moving Preston Smith, and I think that the pass rush got better. And that pod, I wish we could find out what pod that was, because I know exactly what you're talking about, Andy. It was him just pointing out that this pass rush is getting better as the season went on, because it was bad early in the year. And, it wasn't so much diving into the tape early in the year, although there was a little bit of that where you look up and go, yeah, they're not really pinning their ears. But, man, in the second half of the season, they really, really started to put things together. So definitely something to keep in mind there. But next, we already hit those. Greg Rice said, also, since we know Jai is gone, is there any available cornerbacks we can add for depth, or since pressure on quarterback makes it easier on the DBs, could we add an edge, Trey Hendrickson, Zadarius Smith, Jadeveon Clowney, etc.? I think it's right back to the progress stopper comment up top here, Greg. I think that's going in the opposite direction. If you can find me a cornerback on the market that's better than what we got, I'm definitely open ears, man. We've got room on the bottom of the roster, and that doesn't mean you sign somebody to put them on the bottom roster. It means there's room to push people down the roster if you get someone who's significantly better. Carrington Valentine's passer rating when targeted last year was really, really good. Really good. Keyshawn Nixon's was in the hundreds, one of the worst in the league. Now, passer rating when targeted, touchdowns come into factor there. I think Keyshawn gave up 5 touchdowns last year. Carrington, the last I checked, let me double check it if I can do it without too much dead air here. I want to say Carrington didn't give up a single touchdown all year last year. Let me double check that real quick here. Touchdowns allowed. Where are you at, Carrington? Yeah, Carrington Valentine did not give up a touchdown all year long. His passer rating when targeted, according to NFL Pro, with the game tape to match it, 69.0 was his passer rating when targeted. So Carrington did not give up a single point for the Packers last year. To put that into perspective, let's see here. Let's see who led the team, or vice versa. Keyshawn Nixon gave up 6 touchdowns. Javon Bullard gave up 3 touchdowns. Keep in mind, this is in coverage, okay, guys? 6 touchdowns allowed for Keyshawn, 3 for Javon Bullard, 3 for Isaiah McDuffie, 3 for Eric Stokes, 2 for Jair Alexander. People don't talk about that, do they? He gave up 2 touchdowns last year. Eric Wilson, 2 touchdowns. Evan Williams, only 1 touchdown. Corey Ballantyne, 1. Xavier McKinney, 0 touchdowns allowed. And same thing with Carrington Valentine. And Carrington Valentine, again, 2 interceptions. On the season, Xavier McKinney finished with 8 interceptions. Jair and Carrington both had 2. And then Keyshawn Nixon had 1. Zane Anderson had 1. Evan Williams had 1. So, again, there's just another statistic there in terms of Carrington Valentine not allowing a single touchdown all year. So, and again, that goes into play for the passer rating with targets, probably one of the most important aspects of that statistic. So, moving along here, Chris Ian, terrible news. Take the cap savings and go all in for Bengals Hendrickson now. I think we kind of talked about that. I don't know if you're being serious or not. Listen, if you can get Trey Hendrickson for a year, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I just have a hard time believing that he's not going to want that contract he's trying to get from the Bengals. That's the part that makes me scratch my head. So, and Chris M went on to say, Clayton, the Packers are up against the cap already for next season, right? Do you think Goot just wants to roll a majority of this $45 million into next year? We kind of talked about that earlier today. I wish I could find out if that includes the rollover for next year, because I don't think it does. I could be wrong. Like when you look at the multi-year salary cap tracker here on Spot Track, it's showing our cap space this year, $45.4 million. Let's see if 2026 adds a rollover. It does not show a rollover. That doesn't mean, though, that there's not a rollover. And the estimated cap next year is set at $307 million. Obviously, it increases every year. So if we go to our cap situation right now, let me just take a quick peek and see if I can find. I mean, we know what the rollover is going to be as it sits right now, but I just don't know if they're factoring that in or not at the moment. Because that'd be really good information if we could figure out if that's the case. Actually, this might be the page to do it. Exempt, permission list, rollover. Okay, so the 2024 rollover was $15.1 million. That is factored into the adjusted salary cap for this year, for 2025. Let me click on 26 to see if they got the same thing, because I really would like to know that. That's going to answer your question a little more detailed there. So it's showing 2025 rollover cap at 11.8 right now, 11.8 million. So, yeah, that doesn't include that then, right? Because if it was the true rollover cap from this year, I imagine that rollover cap was probably preset from the years before as well. That's interesting. It might be one of those things too. But let's look at the total salary that we have, or total cap that's eat up here. Yeah, total cap for us next year is $288.9 million. Okay, that's the cap that we've already got tied up. And again, the projected cap, remember that number for me, 288, and the projected salary cap is 307. So yeah, that does not include the rollover then. So yeah, I think we're right there, Chris. I think you're going to take that $29 million and tack on the 45 too. So we're even in a better spot, than we thought. Now, again, I'm not one of these fans that's like, yeah, our cap situation looks great. Put the best team on the field. That's why I was okay with keeping Ja, although I'm not like torn over it. Chris Coleman with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Can you compare Hobbs' tackle rate to Ja's? Boy, that'd get ugly quick. Tackle rate is kind of tough. We'd have to try to find an analytic that shows missed tackle percentage. And when you try to do this type of search through AI, you can't trust it, guys. It's compiling a bunch of different articles and all this information, and you'll find the numbers are almost always incorrect with AI. PFF grade probably be the closest thing we would have. Nate Hobbs last year, if I can get this to pull up, I'll get his PFF has been struggling all day long too, so it's probably not going to load. I know he had a better tackle grade, and you might just be being a little sarcastic there, Chris. I don't know, but Hobbs, one of Hobbs' strength in his game is tackling, and he's been fairly durable too. I think Wildy talked about the number there. In the last 4 years, Jair has played 30-some games, and I think Hobbs in the last 4 years has played in over 50. So he's definitely been healthier, albeit he is a little bit younger. But I do feel very confident saying that Hobbs is a much better tackler. There's no two ways about that. So here's the premium stats for Hobbs last year. His tackle grades, reading them off week by week: 78.2, 72.8, 56, 30, 30, 33, 82, 80, 28, 26, and 77. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of the 17 weeks. So keep in mind, he missed time between 10 weeks. He didn't play in week 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, or 16, and there's a bye week in there somewhere. So he missed something like 5 games, I want to say, last year. But yeah, his tackle grade is significantly better than Ja's. I don't have Ja's pulled up, but I actually had it in that article we were hitting on. So let me drop this down. Again, thanks to everybody with the Patreon questions. You guys and gals are absolutely awesome. Let me see. Just hop back to the Patreon article real quick, and I won't pull it up on the screen, but we can compare Ja's real fast. I got to get out of here. I'm way over. Wife been gone for darn near a week. She's wondering why I'm still acting like she's out of town. Let's see here. There's the article. That is not the article. We'll just get us a quick little glance at this on our coverage. And again, you guys have access to all this over on Patreon. Jair's tackle grade last year, 45, 75, 70, 45, 75, 70, 29, 77, 24. So you had 3 games in there where it was above 70. That's, I got to be honest with you, that's a little bit better than I expected, you know. But when you turn on the tape, and again, this is just blindly going off of PFF. When you turn on the tape, if you get a chance, go watch some Nate Hobbs tape. He plays very physical. I see that and I get excited, but I also see that and go, crap. Can he stay healthy? Hopefully he stays healthy, you know, because that's the thing that got Ja. Ja used to be kind of physical tackling before Najee Harris ran through his face and hurt that shoulder, right? So, yeah, maybe we can do a little deep dive on that tomorrow, Chris, and get a little bit better answer for you. But I feel very confident and comfortable saying that Nate Hobbs is significantly more aggressive and more efficient tackler than Jaire is. I probably need to try to find a missed tackle rate, and those are kind of hard to find with cornerbacks when looking at analytics. Thank you for the super chat, bud. Appreciate you. All right, we're out of here, guys. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. Hopefully we covered enough for y'all tonight. A lot of information came down the pike. So I thought, you know what, let's just try to dive into it all. Tomorrow we got mandatory minicamp. I don't know when the media is meeting with them. Hopefully we get a little more added coverage of everything here coming up tomorrow. So, yeah, appreciate everybody in the chat. You guys were awesome in here tonight, man. It was lit up. We had a huge crowd too. Thank y'all so much for making us a part of your evening. Also want to give a quick plug for our giveaway here. If you guys want an opportunity to win an awesome piece of memorabilia, autographed Dorsey Levens jersey, and you want to donate to a good cause while doing so, just go over to my Twitter account at Packers_access. You'll see a link. The tweet will be pinned at the top of the page. You'll see a link there, givebutter.com/KRPSJ5. For every $5 you donate to our good friends over at My Autism Connection, you will be entered into the contest one time. For every $5 you donate, we'll put everybody's name on the wheel, spin that sucker, and give away that autographed jersey to one special person that took the time and funds to donate to an absolutely awesome cause. Again, that's My Autism Connection, building hope, community, and independence for autistic adults. Also, this week, Saturday, we're going to be doing a giveaway, another autograph card. This one's pretty sweet. It's a Romeo Doubs autograph card, okay? And that was donated by our good friend Rick Kruger. So anybody who's a member of the $3 tier in our Patreon group, again, all that stuff we just covered, you get early access to all that in our Patreon group. Anybody who's a member of the $3 tier, patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access, just the $3 tier. You don't have to go the 5 or the 10. That's just there if you want to be an extra blessing and give to the show. But you're a member of the $3 tier, you're going to be entered into the contest. We're going to put everybody's name from that on the wheel Saturday, spin that sucker, and give away that autographed Romeo Doubs card. Still waiting to hear back from Paul Grant, who won the autographed Kingsley Enagbare card from last week. Mountain Man Pack was second. He already came forward, so if we don't hear from Paul Grant, it'll go to Mountain Man Pack. So Paul Grant, if you hear my voice, shoot me a DM, buddy. I DM'd you on Patreon, but make sure you reach out. We'll give it till like Friday. If we don't hear from you, then we'll go ahead and give it to Mountain Man Pack. So everybody, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. Feel free to, like I said, turn the notifications on and all that good stuff. Bates with the super chat. Thank you, Clay, for flying solo recently. We appreciate it. Go Pack. Hey, my pleasure, Bates. Appreciate you guys, man. I know y'all are always in here thanking me for the content and everything, but I want to thank y'all because it's this show would suck if we didn't have the chat and didn't have the interaction and didn't have all the listeners reaching out through the Patreon community and on Twitter and everything else. Y'all make this show go, and really appreciate the super chats, everybody. We'll see y'all tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Central Time for PTA Live. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. Go.
Here we go.
We're out.
Bye, guys.